My job is insane. And by that I mean that my job is busy. The workload is intense, the hours are ridiculous, and the pay, well, the less said about that, the better. I work in this old, stately building in the downtown area of the city that I live in. It's bordered by marble columns and grand steps, which during the day are full of people, but at night the place is empty. And that is where this story begins. Because of my heavy workload, I often find myself spending my evenings in my office, staring at my glowing computer screen. Technically, the building closes at 4:30 p.m., but workers are allowed to stay in the building overnight, so long as we keep our IDs on us. Once in a while, a Templar security guard will poke their head into my office and ask to see the card, which I dutifully show them before returning to my endless stream of emails. I try to leave before 11 p.m., but that isn't always possible. Not only is my workload insane, my boss is a jackass, and he's not shy about making subtle threats. Well, I don't know if subtle is the right word for them. He's this big, burly, hairy man that lumbers around the building like a monster, and more than once he's walked into my office and said something along the lines of, "If you want a job when you come back on Monday, then this report or file or whatever will be on my desk by Monday too. Understood?" To which the answer is always, "Yes, sir," and then a hidden middle finger when he turns his back. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about my boss. I'm here to talk about what happened to me last weekend. The reason I was there was because of my jackass boss, but he wasn't present when this happened. Nobody was present when this happened. I was working like a dog, wearing oversized sweatpants and an even more oversized hoodie, writing out the final pages of a report. I remember looking at the clock, blinking red, and seeing that it was 1 a.m. on Monday, the last day of my weekend, and all I had done was work. My girlfriend had been texting me all day, begging for some of my time. She had been sending me cute pictures of her dog with sad captions, which had been driving me crazy. By 1 a.m., though, it felt like I was alone in the world. I hadn't seen anyone for a while. The Templar security guard hadn't been around for a few hours, and the lights in the other offices and hallways had been turned off, which wasn't unusual. I preferred the dark anyway. At one point, I decided I needed a break. Believe it or not, I still wasn't done. I wasn't planning on going home, I just needed some time away from my computer screen. So I picked up my phone and left my office. I was going to use a trip to the bathroom as my excuse. The building is old and massive and strangely open concept. I left my office and entered a long hallway. One wall leads to all of the offices along the side of the corridor, which includes mine. The other wall, the other side of the hallway, is a giant sheet of glass, which gives a perfect view down onto the main marbled floor. At risk of identifying my place of work, I'm going to tell you that marble floor is where the customers come, and that is usually where they stay. There are long, sturdy counters where plenty of money changes hands. The offices, my office, is technically on the second floor, so we're elevated from that space, looking down onto it. But I reached the end of the hallway, entered into a square stairwell, descended it, and found my way to the men's washroom. It was when I was climbing that stairwell again, on my way back to my office, when I heard glass smash. It was distant, dulled and muted by a few walls, I assumed. I stopped walking up the stairs and waited, listening. But I didn't hear anything else. And given what ended up happening, you're probably going to wonder why I didn't call the police or call Templar or do anything. Well, it's because I convinced myself that I hadn't heard it. Surely I hadn't heard glass breaking. It was just some piping or some ventilation, or maybe there was somebody else working late. It wasn't glass breaking. I mean, it was. I later learned that it definitely was. At the time, though, in that dark, large building, I convinced myself that I hadn't heard it. I finished my climb up the stairwell and started walking down that long, dark hallway. My office is towards the far end, easily identifiable that night by the electronic glow of my computer screen, which was shining on the carpet beyond the door. As I walked, I pulled out my phone and looked at my girlfriend's dog again. I had no idea what kind of app she had put the photo into, but it was an adorable picture of her German Shepherd pup with a large caption that read, "Is Daddy ever coming home?" It was stupid. It was silly, but it made me smile all the same. During the walk, something caught my attention. On my left, beyond those large glass windows, there was movement below. I stopped walking and turned. I stepped closer to the glass and looked down into that huge entrance chamber. It was dark. The only light was coming from streams of silver moonlight which were spilling in from the high windows. Still, I could see movement. I could see someone. They were stumbling. Even from a distance, I could see cuts all over their body, bloody wounds. Their thin, straggly hair was long and blonde, tangled and unwashed. It hung about them like a curtain, obscuring their face. They tripped over their own feet and fell to the ground. My first instinct was to race down and help them. It looked like a person in distress, someone having a medical emergency, but then I remembered the sound of glass breaking and connected that noise to the many bloody wounds that this person had all over their body. There was nobody else there either, nobody pursuing them, nobody with them. They were alone. They had broken in. They had smashed the glass. I watched. I think I was in a state of shock. This wasn't something I had ever experienced before, and honestly, I had no idea what to do. Yes, looking back, I should have called the police immediately, but I was frozen, terrified. I just stared. I felt safe in that dark hallway. The lights weren't on, so I was relatively confident that the person wouldn't be able to see me. I stared as they picked themselves up and stumbled over to the wooden counter. I stared as they landed on the counter and looked up at the ceiling, crying out. Their face was dim in the moonlight, but the curtain of hair fell back to reveal a shockingly weathered, wrinkly face, almost like this person was wearing a mask. I stared as they rounded the counter, pulling out their hair, pulling out large chunks of greasy, light hair. And then they looked at me. Their face snapped towards me. Their eyes were small and black and beady. They bore into me, despite the fact that I was in a dark hallway, they stared directly at me. I stared back, my heart thudding in my terrified chest. That lasted for a few seconds before the person launched into a sprint, running towards the stairwell at the far end of the room. I wanted to cry, I wanted to leave my body, float into space, escape this reality, but when I heard the door to the stairwell open, and I heard the sounds of heavy, vicious footsteps pounding up the stairs, I was shocked into action. I ran down the rest of the hallway, jumped into my office, and slammed my computer shut, plunging the space into blackness. I pulled myself under my desk, holding my knees to my chest. The sound of the upper stairwell door echoed through the hallway. That person was on my floor, looking for me. I stayed there, huddling under my desk. I was shivering. I was terrified. I looked down at my phone, the cute face of my girlfriend's German Shepherd staring back up at me, and I shut it off. I shut off my phone. I hoped that wouldn't be the last time that I saw them. Again, you can judge me for turning off my phone, for not calling the police, but I knew that that person was coming and they were coming fast. I didn't want to risk leaving my phone on. That thing makes noise. Even on silent, it makes fucking noise. I didn't want to take that chance. So I stayed there, trying to control my breathing, trying to control my heart. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare make a sound, a single fucking sound. But that doesn't mean there weren't sounds. There were. The sounds of shuffling, unsteady footsteps on the office carpet. They started far away, barely audible, but got closer and closer, louder and louder. I was focusing so hard on that noise that the softness of the footsteps became deafening. As that person approached, my heart lurched and seized and thrummed violently in my chest. I thought I was going to pass out. Soon, they were right outside of my office. I could hear them, their raspy, crackling breaths, their shuffling gait. They were right there. I prayed that they would keep moving past, that I would hear their footsteps continue down the hallway, but I didn't. They stayed there. I could hear them standing there. They didn't come in. They didn't come any closer. They just kept breathing. And then, eventually, they started to move away, back down the hall, until finally I heard the door to the stairwell. It opened, and then it closed. I turned my phone back on and quickly called the police. I told the dispatcher what had happened and waited under my desk until they showed up. They never caught the person. Somehow, I think my boss holds a grudge against me for the damage to the glass doors, which is insane because I know he's seen the surveillance video. Anyway, that was definitely one of the strangest, most terrifying experiences of my life. That person still comes to me in my nightmares. Their black eyes, their rat's nest that could barely be mistaken for hair, which they pulled at viciously, ripping out chunks. The one question I'll never be able to stop asking myself is, what would have happened if they had come into my office? What would have happened to me if that person had found me? I don't want to know. I don't want to know the answer to that question.